Hi, Thea. Is that how I pronounce your name in English? Thea instead of Thea?
Tia, your choice.
Whatever
Hi,
works.
Robert. Good to meet
And
you.
welcome to Big Minds
Thank you.
Camp. I've been looking so much forward to speaking with you. Um,
You too.
it's rare I have a chance to really pick somebody's brain that is so deep into organizational design and like modern building of organization as you are. But I actually wanted to start out with a question that I like to kind of start out with. So you are spending a lot of time talking with businesses about what I would call modern ways of organize your business structure. When people reach out to you and engage with you and talk to you and say, "Hey, Tia, we need your input, we need your help.
hmm
Please come and talk with us." What challenges is it that they are normally seeing? What are the biggest like kind of reasons that they reach out to you? What is it they're trying to solve?
Hmm. Well, the feeling of tension, that things are not working the way they expect them to do in the regular setup. So they feel this the drawing from the future that something is changing and they're lacking behind. And to describe it more tangibly, they kind of feel that they're wasting their time. So the old ways of doing things is stalling progress.
Hmm.
That you end up spending so much time in meetings. You end up spending too much time on a Teams call with your emails, with waiting for somebody else to take decisions. So it's very much
Interesting.
this sense of, ugh, uh, yeah, we're wasting our time.
So how is that because the companies you usually work with are startups, they become successful, they kind of grow, and then at some point, is it normally along that journey that at some point they start to see these challenges and then they kind of reach out to you in order to say, hey, how do we solve this?
I often work with companies quite early, so they also come to me saying, we did this in our previous roles and jobs and companies, and now we're starting new, and we want to avoid that scenario. So we want to build something that's different from the very set off uh, because of what we experienced um, in these kind of outer circumstances, but also because there's something telling us that there's a different way to do things.
Hmm.
There's a different way of leading that we believe in, and but we don't know how.
Fascinating. So what do you tell them?
I tell them that there is a how. That
There is a different way.
there is definitely a different way, and that there are lots of examples. So there
Yeah,
are lots of cases, but they still need to find their own way,
yeah,
which can be annoying. Can you just give us a recipe? Can we just please, implement this? Uh, Go do. And of course, there are some basics. Start
yeah.
here, but along the way, you need to build your own ways of working and your own culture.
So I totally recognize that at 24 slides. The
hmm
calendars filling up really fast. And the challenge that, and we're actually kind of, I won't say we struggle with it now, but it is a challenge when you grow and you get more people. You need
hmm
more communication. You need more alignment. In order to do that, you need more meetings. And there is a dichotomy in on one end you want to make sure everyone is aligned, that everything is kind of well communicated and done the right way. But at the
hmm
same time, because you grow so much, it's kind of like you can't really do that. So how is in that scenario where they feel like we're doing too many meetings, there's not much progress, we're slowing down. Do you have maybe an example of somebody where you said, they were experiencing, you don't have to name them by name, but they were experiencing this situation where, pace of decision making, for instance, went down. And then we went in, we looked at how they work with that, and how you kind of went through it and how it came out in the other end. I would love to learn more about that.
hmm well, one example. is from a Danish scale up, and they were hitting this 120 people, and they had 10 managers,
Mhm.
like 10 kind of VP level,
Yeah.
and their meetings, management meetings, just prolonged and prolonged and prolonged, because they had this mindset that they really wanted everyone to be equal, which
Yes.
is super nice and super fair. But it then ended up with this like consensus way of
Mm.
we all have to have an opinion about everything,
Yes.
uh, uh, which then it drags out, and people give up, and it just
Yes.
becomes the same people always deciding because those are the most extroverted or outspoken or whatever. Um, so what they did was they started experimenting with roles and responsibilities. It's something we've talked about in HR and people functions forever.
For many
But
years.
it's a different approach to roles and responsibilities. It's where you break down the roles into smaller pieces
Yeah.
that you can then divide amongst people. So it's not like you are the C something O and then these are all your roles, but we distribute them amongst us. So we can also distribute decision making and make it much more clearer who has the final call on what. Uh, and then when we have decisions to make in the larger community, we can give our proposal and then ask if anybody has any objections. So rather than having to discuss everything in detail and everyone has to have an opinion, then if anyone has any objections, they would say that, and you can, as the decision proposer, adjust your proposal, and then you decide. So the decision power is with this role, and you don't have to ask permission. You just have to ask if there is any objections. So it's more like consent based rather than consensus based, and this just speeds up decision making really quickly.
That's one of the keys in holacracy, right? Is
Yes,
that
yeah,
holacracy?
yeah. No, they didn't. They didn't organize as holocracy, as a holocracy as such. But again, they made their own choices. So
Yeah.
inspired by new ways of working, they said, okay, this particular method will work within our context, because they didn't break. They were still a management team,
Yeah.
so they didn't take away all management layers and just made it completely flat like in a holocracy. But they would adapt this methodology to
I
their
love
need.
that. So they move from
Mm.
consensus to what's the other
Consent.
one? Consent, from consensus to consent. And basically that means instead of reaching consensus on what is the right solution, you
Mm.
present a solution and then you ask, do you see anything wrong with this solution? And e.g., if you
Yeah.
don't see anything wrong, this is what we move on with. I recall that
Mm.
as that is fascinating. Um, in Holacracy, they have that one, right? Where you basically say, we're not looking for the perfect solution. We're just looking for a solution that is better. And if you don't see a problem with a better solution, then by default we move forward with it. Is it kind of the same
Mm.
thing?
Yeah, it's this underlying mindset of good enough for now, safe enough to try. That Aaron Dignan speaks about a lot from the Ready. I mean, it's a broad
Interesting.
known term now, but it's okay. Is it good enough for now? Yeah, it's good enough. And is it safe enough? Is this going to break anything like major in our strategy? No. Okay, let's try it out, and then we can always give it like an end date. So think of it more as an eternal experiment, so to speak. But we're twisting. It's an agile way of working, right? So let's do this for 3 months, see if it works, and then we'll twist it and adjust it to however the circumstances have changed in between.
So how did that end up materializing in the company? Did that then mean that in the same span of time of a meeting, they could just make like 10x the decisions that they did before, or how did that change their day
I
to
wish
day?
I had those numbers. That would be such a convincing slide, right?
Yeah, that's true.
From
Moving up your decision
uh,
making. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's when I left them, they were experimenting with this and were going to bring it to their teams as well. Uh, So bringing it to their teams must mean that they have, found out that this worked for them.
Nice, nice. I like that consensus versus consent. I have to think about that one. Interesting. How does so when you work both with culture seen from a performance standpoint, but also from a culture standpoint. One of the things that we care a lot about is culture and that impact on kind of motivation and identity. How do you see when you work with companies around culture and how they work with culture? Could you put some words into what you think the importance of culture is and the difference you see between companies that is doing it in from your perspective the right way and companies where it's not done the right way?
Mm, mm. I think a lot of companies are doing it very much in the right way. Its
Yeah.
culture is big now, and human resources has even changed its name from human resources to people and culture in most companies. I think the next wave is for it to not be people and culture, but because culture doesn't belong in one department.
No.
Culture is something that belongs everywhere in the company, and I think where it goes wrong now, even if there is a focus on it, is when it's just delegated to
Yes.
like a people and culture team, and not ingrained in everything we do. That is where it goes well. That's where you think, okay, when we decide on a new partnership with an external partner, is this is this does this reflect our culture? Does this reflect our purpose, our mindset, our values, or is this taking us in the wrong direction? When
Got
we
it.
design our onboarding process, when we do our offsites, when we find out how we make decisions.
Mm.
So everything we do basically is that aligned with the culture that we want to cultivate in this company. And if you
How
can
do
say yes, you're doing the right thing.
how did they do that? The companies that did it well, how do you do that? Like practically, like how do you
Yeah.
what what scenarios in the company is it where it is important to kind of say, how do you make sure that that is a part of that decision making practically? Do you know?
Mm, yeah, absolutely. Um, it's still about those very basic things like defining your values or principles or your mindset, your virtues. I've heard of a
Yes.
company that work with their virtues,
Yes.
uh, and I really love that. And then thinking about what does that then mean in practice.
Yeah.
So we don't really talk about our values. We act upon our values,
Yeah.
and we act upon them in again in everything we do. But we can break it down into some areas. I've created this based on a lot of good people's thoughts. This culture canvas, a culture
Yes.
design canvas, where there are six basic areas in which, when you're a startup scale up, this is where you can begin to make sure that the decisions you make, the practices you install, are based on your cultural foundation. So your purpose, why you're here, and your mindset, your values. What's the way that you are in the world? What's your kind of your view of the world, your view of other human beings?
Mm.
So based on that foundation, um, there are two things that you can think about, two kind of pillars. One is the employee life cycle. So how do we recruit and onboard people?
Yeah.
Um, how do we incentivize and work with motivation? And how do we work with learning and development in the very broad sense that at some point somebody's also going to almost everybody's going to leave the company at some point for some reason, and how do we handle that? So that employee life cycle, that we make sure that everything we do there is informed by our cultural foundation. So we don't say, we have trust as a key value, but in our incentives, we have kind of a bit of a control mechanism because we don't really trust people, you know, or we actually we really do trust people, but in our old company they used this mechanism, and now we just adapt it. You
Yeah.
know, we just take it and bring it in without thinking, does it actually fit the culture that we want to create? Often that's what I see with scale ups. You know, we need some kind of performance management because we had performance management in my old company, and the way we did it was like this. So we'll just bring that on the table, and then it completely ruins the culture that you want to create in the new company, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen that as well. Then on the other side of the canvas, there is the other pillar that's like your everyday routines. So here we talk about how do we have, what are our meetings like, and how do we make decisions? How do we where and when do we work? So the hybrid work, the
Yes.
flexibility and all of that, how do we handle that? And then finally, how do we socialize? Again, this is one of the things where it's a big thing going from being a startup to being a scale up. Maybe you have more uh, like a you know, let's get out and get drunk kind of way of doing things in the early
You've
days.
seen that. You've
Uh,
seen that in companies once or twice.
Once or twice, I don't mind. But if you if you then again have like a cultural foundation of inclusion, and you
Yes.
start hiring people, there are different stages in their life from different cultures, etc. Is this actually the way of socializing that will again make our culture real and tangible? So here you have these six very, very concrete things to think about when you design your culture. And they
Interesting.
can be informed then again by new ways of working. So you don't have to adapt uh, the old things that you did before. You can have your meetings in a different way. You can make your decisions in a different way, etc., etc.
Who becomes the value police is my question. Who makes? I assume it has to be like a founder or a CEO or some. It must be somebody high up,
Mm-hmm.
because if we are talking about somebody who can both touch onboarding, compensation say statement, how do we meet up socially? I mean, it's basically seems like it's spreading the entire company, right? Is
Mm-hmm.
this something seen
Mm-hmm.
from your perspective to do it properly? It sounds to me like it needs to be CEO that is primary sponsor of it. Is that how you see it as well?
Mm-hmm.
Or at
No,
least supporter?
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely support it. I mean, it has to live in whatever kind of leadership setup you have. If it's a founder or a CEO, or if it's a leadership team, you know, depending on how you're structured. And again, the way that you decide to structure will also be part of defining your culture, very much indeed. But I think we'll get back to what we talked about in the beginning with roles. How do we think about roles? So some of the successful companies I've seen doing this, they have defined roles such as like culture guardian roles, where in each team there is somebody who has that responsibility, and then they're not managers of the team. They just have the responsibility of checking in. Like, are we aligned with the culture here when we do this? Are we aligned with our purpose here when we do this? And then they meet up in a team where they can then bring up dilemmas, etc. So it's a different way of organizing. Whereas, sorry, I got so excited I lost my.
Yeah, ah!
Um, so instead of thinking we always need to push it to the top, that all
Yeah.
the important decisions and the power needs to be pushed to the top. We push it out into the organization. So we distribute the power, the authority, the decision making responsibilities through roles.
That is fascinating. So in these companies, it sounds like in order to do that, you need to have a lot smaller roles. So that would mean that one person at any given time carries more than one
Yeah,
role. Yes.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
How many roles?
Again, it's you design your organization so it fits. I would say usually what I've seen most successful is probably 5 to 7 roles, something like that. But I've also
How?
seen companies with 20 roles, but then it becomes like it almost becomes bureaucratic to keep it up to
Yeah,
date,
it
which
becomes
is what we're trying to avoid, right? So,
yes,
yeah,
yes, yes. Yeah, epic battle between processing things and then not
yeah,
processing things,
yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely.
So, how do they manage that? That's like, what is the? That is fascinating. I kind of like. I really like the idea. We don't have that. So in our
No.
company, I think that's probably a norm, right? I think that's normal that people is like, okay, so one role equals one person, but
Mm,
basically it doesn't have to. You could break out a role into three different minor roles where you have specific decision responsibility and stuff that fits that
mm,
role, and then one
mm,
person can have several roles. It becomes more fluent, I assume, in then
mm.
who holds which roles at what time and have what. Do you have budgets in that as well? Do you have then a role of somebody, or how would you how do
You
people
can,
manage that? How do they
yeah.
structure it? If you have so many roles, it seems to me that it could be just a simple thing of like get an overview of like this person is these three roles. Do they have
Mm.
departments then? So roles and departments as well, or
Usually they have teams or circles or bubbles or whatever you want to call it. There's this very neat system called Peerdom where
yeah,
you can put in all of your roles and data, and then you get an organizational overview of uh, of the team. So it's instead of this overview that you have like in a normal HR system, uh, you get this overview, and you can zoom in on specific circles or teams and find out what are the roles in this team and who holds them. And you can zoom in on a person and find out which roles does this person hold in which different circles. So as an individual, you can hold roles in different circles. In some organizations, you only have roles within one circle. So again, there isn't one size fits all here. There isn't like this is just how you should do it. But there's tons of inspiration to set it up depending on what it is that you do. But um,
interesting.
but the granularity of the roles, and you were also asking how to how to manage it. It's managed in the teams. So
Yeah,
again, if you look at something like holacracy, there are some defined roles, like
yes,
lead link, etc., and they are in all teams, and you always
yes,
have to select somebody who's responsible, who holds that role. In other companies, you define the roles in the teams and say the roles that we need at the moment to solve our uh, purpose, serve our purpose, are these. And then at a regular interval, let's say every quarter, you revisit the roles, say, are they still relevant? Are we doing the right thing? And are we the right people doing the right things? And if we don't have
fascinating.
people in our team who can fulfill the roles that we need, we can ask if there's somebody in another team.
So it's a I think that's so interesting because when I read about what I really so what I think basically all of
Mm,
organization comes down to is what roles do you have? Who has the power to change and edit a role, and who
mm,
decides what person has what role? Right. That's kind of how what decision making and in a hierarchical structure, it's like it's always the one above you is kind of in decision
mm,
over the roles normally and finding people to fit those roles. How do
mm,
they manage that here? In Holacracy, when I read about that, I recall it as is the lead link. It was two different. So they define that one has the responsibility of defining the roles, and another one has the responsibility of matching roles to people. So you kind of break up the manager because in most
mm,
systems that is the manager, right? If I
mm,
run sales at 24slides.com, so it's in many cases I I always ask for input, and we have a really good managing structure, right? So it's but I basically am responsible for defining the role and then also finding the right person to sit in the role. And that's one of the things that I found fascinating with holacracy to say, okay, but we don't want that. We want the process to do that. So we have
mm.
one process of shaping the role, another process for kind of adding the person into that. If you don't have that, how do you see people set up that decision making? Is it then still like a classical kind of you have one person running a circle and or how do people manage that?
Mm, mm. So it's a little bit back to the decision-making mechanism.
Yeah.
So say we work with consent, then um, anyone can suggest a new role. So anyone can say, "I think we need somebody to take care of this," uh, and that's a suggestion. And then the others can come with their objections and say, "No, I don't think we need that," or "I think that's already part of this role. It will be double if we did that." And then you shape the role as a team.
Got it.
Uh, and then the next one is then who's going to take that role, and that's also different from organization to organization. Either it's the one who suggests the role who would start out by owning it,
Yeah.
and it's his or her responsibility to find the right person to fit it, or you put it out there in the open. And there's a whole process for that as well. Then people can suggest themselves or somebody else, and it sounds heavy. It sounds a lot of time we're going to spend on this, but I've been in a lot of organizational change processes, and that's as heavy. The only thing is, it also creates fear in the organization. So then you have the HR team and the leadership behind closed doors, reshaping the
Yes.
organization, and the
Yes.
rest of the company out there pretending that they're working, but they're not,
They're
because
looking at the door. When does it
they're
open?
looking at the door
When
thinking, what's going to happen to me?
when is it
Do I have
opening?
any say?
It's opening.
Yeah, exactly, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So here you just put it out there, and it's a process that we look at constantly, so we can adapt the organization to the need of our customers, our markets, etc. And we can also adapt it. We're not adapting the organization to the people in it, but the people in it have
You shape the
more of a
roles basically, right?
chance. Yeah, they have more of a chance to say, I'll try out that role. I've always thought it would be interesting.
Yes.
So
If
you
you're in
also
sales, you
take
can actually take a marketing role, right? Because it's a smaller role, you
yes,
can keep a lot of
yes,
your.
yeah, yeah, and it puts the responsibility for development on the individual rather than I'm looking at my manager going, when are you going to develop me?
Yes, exactly. Oh,
Yeah.
I love that. So how does that work then? How do you build um, development plan and growth as a person? How does that
Mm.
work in that scenario? Is that built into the roles? That is like you have this responsibility of growing on your own, or how does that work?
Hmm. Well, and there are different scenarios for it. It
Well, you
begins
mentioned
with the
that in many
mindset.
cases it's the person on their own that kind of drives.
Yeah, yeah, but if you just leave it up to the individual, I think you also lose a lot of energy, and it becomes too complex because you will have people running around doing tons of different things. So it's about setting up the structure. So leadership is in the structure. It's setting up the structure within which people can take responsibility.
Yeah.
So like setting up a structure that would say you can choose somebody amongst your colleagues to be your uh, coach and mentor for the next 3 months. Here is some kind of guide that you can use to have a meaningful conversation. Go do. So rather than it's time for your annual assessment and development conversation with your manager.
Yes.
uh, yeah. So that's
You're
one
not a fan of
concrete.
those. I hear, I sense.
I've had some brilliant development and assessment conversations with brilliant managers in my
Yes.
career, but I've also had the opposite. And just that the idea of having the choice, which person would you prefer to discuss your career and development with?
Yes.
Why would it have to be my manager? Who says that he or she is the person to inspire me at this point of my life?
Yeah.
Um,
So is that
yeah.
normal that you would kind of break that in? So if I'm a person in this organization, I have three roles. I assume you would have a circle that is a sales circle. I assume you would have somebody that's accountable for like how does that work? So performance management in a setup like that, how does that work? I assume you would add from a top line, you would like you from a top part of the company, you would say, okay, we need to grow the company. We have a
Mm-hmm.
strategy that has to be anchored somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
In some sort of management team or somebody who kind of decides that. And then that turns into, uh, I understand sales really deeply. So let's take it from a sales perspective. Then you would have like a sales circle. You have a lot of roles. You have a lot of people. You have some resources in that team. How would you handle performance management? How would you? Who owns that we're actually reaching and doing our things?
As a starting point, the team does
Yeah.
in this type of more self or co-led organization. So the team does. The team has a purpose that they set, but there is a role in the team that would be like a purpose guardian. Say, is what we're doing aligned with what we're put here to do, which is to reach this number.
Let
Uh,
me rephrase
yeah.
actually. I'm sorry. So you have this person, I'm an individual in a sales team. I can pick my own kind of growth mentor or business mentor. I assume there's somebody following up on whether or not I am not just growing, but I'm creating value for the company. And if I hold,
Mm-hmm.
is that defined in the roles then? So if I have like, let's say I have a role that is, I'm a account manager role. I hold that role in the company. Is that then tied up to a certain level of performance in that role that I have to live up to some expectations? Do you build that into the role, or how does that work
Mm.
in a setup like this?
So you're thinking in terms of KPIs or things that you have to
Yeah,
reach.
I assume that you have. So here's where what it comes back to for me. I remember when I hired our first sales managers, and then
Mm-hmm.
I thought about how do I. It actually started out. We had an employee that didn't work out, so it was like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this person that is not working, and then how do I explain? How do I build a great process for a new manager to say, how do you manage the process of letting somebody go? And then I was
Mm-hmm.
like, you have to be able to tell somebody, hey, you're not living up to expectations. This is the expectations. You are here. There's a gap. And the way
Mm-hmm.
I've always managed it is to say, um, you give a warning, of course, of saying, hey, you're not where we need you to be. You're not successfully fulfilling this role, and you need to. That's like
Mm-hmm.
that's why you're here. And then you do like a plan of saying, can we get you up here? And then
Mm-hmm.
we agree that over a certain period of time, if we cannot close this gap, it fundamentally means you, the person, you're not a great fit for this role and you need to hold a different role. Then either A, we can move the person to another role in the company, or if you don't have another role for this person, they have to leave the company. You have to let them go, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what it came back to is in order to have this, I need to define this. I need to define the success criteria. And I need to define what does success look like. And that made me go back to saying, what is success in. So
Mm-hmm.
for us in the sales team, there's two parameters. There's a performance part, which is for a salesperson to be successful, they have to increase revenue. That's just like the role of the job. Marketing person has to do
Yeah.
better marketing. Programmer has to do quality code. So that's a part of it. And then in our company, you have a personal part of it as well. So there's a lot about you give quality feedback. You're passionate about your colleagues. There's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
personal stuff
Mm-hmm.
that we add in as well. My question to this is, I as a manager now, I hold those roles, so I have that kind of tree of roles, and then I can use that to talk to my managers of saying, you're now at this role, which means we have these expectations from a personal standpoint. We have some performance expectation. On performance, you're really high. On here, you're really low, or wherever it is. That you can then go back to both have performance conversations, but also if you need to let somebody go and they're not performance, you can have that kind of transparent conversation. So that was a very long question to basically say,
Yeah.
I assume that information must live in this hierarchy as well. And where is it put? Is it owned by a manager? Or is it owned in these micro roles? Is it kind of built into the roles? And then how do you, let's say somebody have 5 roles.
Mm-hmm.
Is it the same kind of setup you have? I mean, how do you do performance management in a setup like that?
Mm. Again, going back to it being in the team. So
Yes.
are we as a team? reaching our goals. And we have a more transparent, more open discussion about this in the team. But we will still check in on our goals. And I'm not saying it's easy
No.
because you will have there might be a person who's not performing in the team, and then we as a team have to talk about that openly. So it becomes not me and my manager, but me and my team. So I'm accountable to my team. I'm not accountable to my
Interesting.
manager. And it requires much more of an adult relationship, um, which you can also have with a great manager. And I truly believe with what I'm hearing you say, Robert, that's what's happening in your team. But we also see a lot of managers where it becomes more of like a parent-child kind of, I'm
Yes, yes,
telling
yes.
you what
The
to do.
mommying, yes.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, and I know that there are also organizations where there are a lot of young people. They're still learning and being trained, etc. But they're still adults, they're still managing their own lives.
Mm,
So we should expect people to come in there with that, accountability, of saying to a team, we will do this together. And if I'm not performing, then maybe, I should try out some different roles that fit me better. And it's less threatening to suggest this person to maybe try out some other roles, because you can design your own job more easily. It's not like if you're not performing in this role, then you're out of here,
mm,
right?
yes.
Because you have this more granular
Yeah, you
way
can
of
take
thinking.
out of the five roles, you can leave one, leave two, and then pick
Yeah,
up some other stuff.
yeah, yeah,
Could you then theoretically end up in a situation where you have somebody on a sales team that is not really functioning and are suggested, hey, maybe you should leave these two roles because it seems like you're not doing it? And then
yeah.
they pick up like an operational role and a marketing role. Would they then have to be in like three team meetings or three team setups where they would be responsible for?
I understand your questions. Uh, Again, it depends on the structure that you've created. If you can you is this a kind of organization where you can have roles in different
Do that.
teams, or isn't it?
Or you would build
Um,
that into the process then, right? To say there's some
yeah,
certain
yeah,
guidelines, you could
yeah,
just add that into it.
yeah.
I really like that idea of having the the team accountability. I really like. Yeah, I really like that. It can also be brutal, right? But in reality, it's just
Absolutely.
bringing
Yeah,
transparency to what is probably there, and
yeah,
forcing those conversations.
yeah. I don't know if you've read like Frederick Laloux and the whole reinventing organizations with
Yes,
Teal, and yeah.
the teal
So the
organizations. Yes,
yeah, so the Teal organization um, is not necessarily this chummy place where we're just having a good time and we're friends and we're all the time. Uh, it's also a place where you need to have tough conversations, where you need to address tensions, you need to address conflicts. Um, there is what is also called the green organization, okay, before the teal. I don't know if we can talk about it as like a linear movement, but that the teal organization is more of where you say, oh, we're a family here, and we're we're always nice, and we don't really like to talk about conflicts, etc. Um, if you really go teal and you really go into this adult, it it demands something from you as a
yes.
person, and it's not necessarily for everyone.
No, it's fascinating. So, from your perspective, when you do this right, what is the difference from a company perspective, both in a shorter term and a longer term? How do you see it in performance? Is it like we attract better people? Is it like less churn on people? Faster decision making? How does this materialize in a company? And the reason I want your input on that, of course, is I think I think it's fascinating. But I have you seen that?
Mm.
How do they
Mm.
experience the business performance after?
Yeah, I have not yet come across that one study that really
No.
nails it and says this is the advantage. But the cases I read, It's always like less churn
Yeah.
on people, higher engagement, motivation, and the quicker decision making. So this being very, very close to your market, and having the decisions made out there at the edges of the organization where you know your customers. So it doesn't have to roll all the way up and then all the way back down again.
Is there a tendency in organizations like that that they are better at doing proper distributed decision making? Do you think?
Yeah, that's very much what it's about.
So the fact that you break it into these smaller roles also means that a part of that process, something happens that is decision power that traditionally is with a manager is kind of distributed into all of these different functions so you can make those
Yeah,
decisions
yeah,
faster.
yeah. But it demands more clarity on the purpose of the company, on
Yes.
the strategy, on setting direction, on being clear. So that like the leadership is all about that, and then setting the structures for people to act within or to self manage within. But if the purpose is vague, this is going to fall apart.
That's interesting because I was a little bit in love with holacracy back in the days, and then I
Mm.
talked to my partner about it, and he was like, it's, and he had a really good point. He's like, it's a really big change, right? And in our
It is a
situation,
really big
we
change.
are 200 people in Indonesia and 25 in Peru and team in Ukraine
Mm.
and in Copenhagen, and there's a cultural aspect of saying, what would it actually take to make this properly work in Indonesia,
Mm.
right? Like a
Mm.
proper, it's circles, it's not that, it's like, and then when we looked at the primary, I mean, the key value that you get out of it, um, because I actually think, and he had a really good point, and I haven't been able to disprove that point yet. that's that's why we haven't done anything, or maybe this
Mm.
conversation will help that. No, but it's basically so we have a really flat structure, and I would say when we make decisions, I don't know if you read No Rules, Rules, the Netflix book, but they have a term called farming for dissent. So, when you make a decision, who do you ask and how wide do you ask, for objections
Mm.
in? When you create and shape roles, how much empowerment is in your structure? How comfortable is somebody at the very bottom of saying, "Hey, I think we should change this," and actually being heard about it?
Mm.
And his point back then was, if you do that really well, it's like I don't think it would be necessarily more effective to have it in circles because, and we were and are still doing that pretty well. I think we have some structures in place for it, but when we kind of look at our office vibe scores and think, it's pretty clear that people really feel like they are taken into decisions, and I would say we're fairly good
Mm.
at the distributed thing. But it's still fascinating because it's like now we're bigger, right? So back then we were,
Mm.
I don't know, 75 employees. Now we're 300.
Mm.
maybe maybe it's more relevant now because I feel
Yeah.
like what you would be forced to go through in building this structure is be very clear on those processes of how do you shape roles, how do you get people into those roles, what lives in those roles. And there's something nice about breaking the people and the roles like 100% from each other. So it's like you have all of these
Mm.
roles floating around, and then you have people who can kind of grab them and execute on them and move them along. That I think works well.
Mm. Say, I'm not preaching holacracy or anything like that. I'm saying, find the structures and the practices that work and support your
Yeah,
culture. So what you say is what you do. That's basically it.
yeah,
And
full
be
stop.
aware that there are different ways of doing things than what we invented back in the Industrial Revolution. That's a lot of years ago, and a lot
Yes,
has changed. So let's look at new ways of doing things. Um, and from what I know, what your guys are doing, I think you're nailing a lot of things really well, and you're experimenting, and that's the way to go. And I think if you're still interested in these things, you don't need to make like a huge company turnover. Find a pocket where you can like create a little dot, a little teal dot, where you
yes,
experiment, And if it works, then other teams are going to go, oh, that's interesting. Let's try out some of the stuff that they're doing over there, right?
Yeah.
So a trend that we're also seeing is that bigger organizations are becoming a bit more fragmented. So it's more like smaller startup scale-ups within the bigger company. So there's more
Mm.
freedom as to ways of working and local cultures, as long as we're together around a common purpose and a common mindset. So the culture foundation is the same, but the way that we live it can be more fragmented because we don't have this top central control mechanism. It's distributed out there. Does this make sense?
Interesting. Yeah, it makes
Yeah.
a lot of sense. Do you think that comes back to, we're going to switch topic a little bit. Do you think that
Mm-hmm.
comes back to the overall relationship between a company, e.g. a legal entity, that has tasks it needs to perform in order to create value, and it needs employees to kind of do that work? Do you think that relationship between company and worker is changing due to we had a pandemic, we have hybrid work, people working remote, and that is a part of that, that it becomes more fragmented in the larger companies, and it seems like there is more openness from a senior leadership perspective of saying maybe we don't have the full truth, maybe we need to actually give people more freedom to do stuff in what actually works. How do you see? Where do you think that
Mm.
comes from? That
Mm.
more flexibility that you see in larger companies.
Mm. I think it comes from an acknowledgement of the pace of the world and the complexity of the world. That the way we were organized before was just it was in a different reality where you could
Mm,
actually predict and control what happened.
yes,
You had production line, and you knew if you put this much in, this much is, and you could predict the markets,
the
etc.
the
And
Taylorism. Yes,
exactly, and it's not the world that we're living in anymore. Because then you have a pandemic, then you have a war, then I mean, I know we've always had pandemics and wars, but what's happening here is influencing all of us so quickly that we have to be able to adapt. And we can adapt much more quickly if we're more, you call it fragmented or more, we can act
uninhibited.
in, yeah, exactly. So you can adapt to a local market. You don't have to have a huge change of strategy for one part of the company to do something. You can experiment with this new product in this. So there's more of, again, it's back to Lalou. It's a sense and respond.
Yeah,
So before we could predict and control, now we need to sense and respond all the time, and that just it's a completely different um, capability for a company, for an organization. But your question was, the
yes,
the
the relationship
relationship
between
between,
company and worker.
yeah, yeah, uh, and of course there are differences from different sectors. There are sectors that are still more like back in the old days. But we do see this even in more standard production companies as well. Like Tesla would have never experienced the huge growth and completely quick go to market if they had worked in very, very traditional ways, right?
But don't
But
they work? They work pretty traditionally, don't they? It's like, or it's more like 12 hours,
maybe in
7 days
their,
per week,
yeah,
and
yeah,
8 hours, 5 days
uh,
per week.
yeah, but not in the way that they think about partnerships and
Got it.
going to market and adapting to reality. Yes, maybe in their more like organizational setup. I mean, I don't know 100% to be honest. Um, so again, there are more traditional areas, but in a lot of companies today now it's knowledge work, right? So you have quite highly educated people,
Mm, mm,
and highly educated people have an opinion,
yes.
and they want to have influence. They want to make an impact. Again, I'm not saying that this is not the case for people with less education.
No,
It
no,
might
no,
be
no, no. I
also,
understand.
but there is definitely a different expectation as to what work is. What work gives me, what I can fulfill in my work,
Yeah,
which also puts a demand on the companies. So you see a lot of, what's the career path? How can I become a manager? When can I develop into this and this and that? Like I work with
an urgency.
graduate programs, and it's just like, when can I become that one who makes the decisions?
Yeah,
So instead of trying to push everyone up, why not push that down? And then it's much
yes,
more efficient, and you avoid that kind of internal
tension.
fight tension. Yeah, I don't know if that
That's
answered
interesting.
your question.
No, no, that I no, I
We
think it's a
digressed.
fascinating talk. And it's actually aligning back to a. I think that change is interesting. I also think if we look at it from like a global perspective, I actually think that I think more is going on than what most really realize
Mm,
in kind of that relationship between people and organizations. And I actually think when we if we go 5, 10 years into the future and then we look back and we look at who's the rock star companies in 5 and 10 years, right? Who are the ones? Who's the new Tesla, the new Google, the
mhm.
new whatever?
Yeah.
I have a feeling that one of the key things that defines all of them is that they are really good at finding a way to attract and build those relationships better than the
Mm,
other companies. Um, because there's so much stuff going on now that it's like, so for instance, a fascinating example, I heard it on a podcast like not that long ago, where they mentioned that a lot of people now are starting to have two jobs because so many jobs have gone remote. So
mm.
people are realizing, okay, I can have two fully remote jobs sitting at home. So the super productive people
Yeah.
can actually, and the example that was mentioned was a programmer working 25 hours per week, earning, I think it was $450,000 from Facebook, being an engineer,
Yeah.
and earning $125,000 per year from a startup, being a CTO, and then having a pretty big equity chunk in that startup. And just maintaining both with 24 hours per week, I assume a really productive person, right? Like once they then
Yeah.
work
Sounds
for
like
those
it.
25 hours, they probably
Yeah. Yeah.
work. And then I thought about that afterwards. I was like, wow, that is fascinating. And then my next question was, is that okay? Is that just all right? Because it seemed like Facebook was perfectly happy.
Hmm.
Facebook didn't know, but based on the performance this person put through, they were like, this is a really good engineer, worth the money, right? So whatever
Hmm.
internal performance metrics they have, this person knocked it out of the park. So in that case, is it then okay? Because and that's because now I'm a partner in my company. So I'm like, on one hand, I'm like, I feel when I hire somebody, a underlying fact of that hiring is I assume that I buy all of your attention and effort to create value in my company. That's my
Hmm.
assumption, you know? And really, what this is doing, I think, is just challenging that assumption of saying, well, are you now, right? Because
Hmm.
you have a
Hmm.
way that you measure productivity based on whatever you have. I'm knocking my roles out of the park. So if I can
Hmm.
do that in 5 hours, why not? Why can't I then have more work? And I ask it because I don't know the question. I really don't.
Yeah.
It's like
No. No. No.
if we
No.
have one of our designers, well, they have a certain amount of design work they have to do within 24 hours that we have in our system because it's like that's if you're a senior designer, it's higher, junior, and what's. But let's say we have one of them that was just like a savant designer that could do three times of that. Would
Hmm.
it then be okay that that person ran their own company, worked in a different company, worked in our company? And I'm like,
Hmm.
on one hand, I'm like, yes, that would be
Okay.
because you're
No,
not
but
breaking
we're
any rules. On the other hand,
we're
I would feel a little bit cheated as
yeah.
an
Yeah.
employer because I treat you really nice, and I would hope that you really want to do more, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, but our whole concept of work is being challenged with AI as well. What is work at the end of the day? Uh, and
Yes.
we're still carrying this, again, back from the industrial revolution mindset of time equals output,
Yes.
or time equals engagement. Uh, but if I sit and work for you 40 hours a week, but I'm not super engaged, does that make you more happy than me working for you 20 hours a week and I'm super engaged those 20 hours because I also get to do this stuff over here for the rest of my time? Output is the same. What do you prefer?
But that is fascinating, right? I don't for me that is pretty clear actually. If
Mm-hmm.
let's take the idea with engineer before. If this person worked, I assume then 14 hours for Facebook per week
Mm-hmm.
and did that job and then played paddle tennis or basketball or whatever they wanted to do, chess, whatever they want to spend their free time on.
Mm-hmm.
For some weird reason, I can feel inside that I would be much more okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
I would be much more okay with that than
Yeah.
assuming the person then went out and spent that, because then I'm like, if you want to do something that is non-work and leisure time and go to a beach or whatever, I would. In my own case, let's say I had a salesperson that is insane, and I actually tell my salespeople this. I'm like, if you can be like a top performing salesperson and you do it by sitting on the beach 2 hours every day, I'm all good. I'm not gonna
Mm-hmm.
ask you any questions. But
Yeah.
I actually feel like I would be cheated out if I found out one of my people is working from home 2 days per week and being full on at another job. For some reason that is weirder. That situation I find harder to kind of accept than what you're saying, because I there's in my head there's a it's easier for me to accept that because you have the leisure time and you have free time, that builds up the energy that enables you to then release much more energy into being productive when you're at work. And I think in general, in 24 slides, me and my partner Tobias, that's always been our focus, because
Mm-hmm.
we both uh, very much dislike the notion that hours equals output, right? It's like, I
Mm-hmm.
remember we talked about that way back when it was almost only me and him. We was like, this company it can simply cannot be a place where hours matters. It's like that is it cannot happen because it's so stupid, right? It's like
Yeah,
you,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then you get people sitting there playing small games in another browser window because you have to sit there.
Yeah,
That's like, come
yeah,
on,
yeah,
that
yeah.
makes
No,
no
no, no,
sense. You
no.
have to be able to track the
Yeah.
productivity. So on that one, we're fully aligned. But then is it okay to? Yeah, I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. I
No,
don't know the
it's
question.
it's an interesting dilemma. Uh, could it be because of the assumptions of the mindset behind, or the mindset of this person working more jobs? Why is he or she doing it? Is it
Yes,
because they're only in it for the money, and then you're afraid that they're not really there for the passion of your company?
I think it could be
Uh,
that. Yeah.
and then they're, because they're only there for the money, then they're kind of cheating you when they're also doing something else. So really, it's more of a mindset clash than actually the fact that he or she is doing more jobs.
This is almost a coaching session. I like it. It's turning. I don't know if I like it actually. It's like we're digging into Robert's
I'm
soul
going to
now. It's like,
charge you now. No.
yes, exactly. Interesting. That could actually be it. Yeah, because
Mm,
it's underneath. There's a lack of passion. I assume this person is not very passionate about their work for Facebook. That would be my assumption. It could sound to me, without knowing the full story, that I have a pet project I'm passionate about, and then I just I just
mm,
drain the
mhm.
coffers of the evil corporation, right? Yeah,
Or
that
could
could
be
that
that there is so much learning going on in this pet
yeah,
project that benefits uh,
yes.
the other job
And
without,
that's why I don't have the
actually
answer.
no,
Because I agree, it could be,
yeah,
and it could be that this person, like, and the opposite way around. It could be I have access to
mm,
so many
mm,
super skilled people, technologies, all of this stuff at Facebook that I really bring into this startup, and that enables me to be much more effective. So that it's
mm,
a good thing. But it's fascinating times, I think, from that perspective, because let's assume that that will be the norm. Let's assume that it was accepted.
Mm-hmm.
Then all of a sudden, there's a lot of things that are up in the air, right? Like if you hire somebody, yeah, there's so much that I think I would actually have to think more about it. But there's a point I actually want to ask you about because you bring up AI.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how do you think what we see AI is hyped slash completely overhyped from my standpoint at this moment in time, right? But how do you see that kind of impacting work and the way we work, and where are you on a measurement of saying, we need universal basic income because nobody will be working anymore, and it will like be a hype cycle that is over, and then we move on. How do you think it fits?
Mm-hmm. Um, Probably a little bit more. I've not thought about that scale before. Kind of like I think
No.
I'm a little bit leaning a little bit more towards the universal basic income. Uh, I don't think it's a hype that's going to be gone. I think it's going to affect the way that we learn, live, work, whatever. Uh, but I don't think it's going to make us out of work. It just accelerates the need to rethink work and what work
Yeah.
is, and how we uh, come together around work and the expectations that we bring with us as employers, as employees, etc. I know it's been very kind of yeah.
Do you think it's how do you think it's different from the introduction of the personal computer, for instance, Excel? If you look at what happened before pre-personal computer to post-personal computer, or computer in general,
Mm-hmm.
do you think it
You
would
think
be
I'm
radically
that
different from
old that
that?
I can remember?
No, no, I am just assuming that you kind of know. No, the reason is I'm actually, and that is just to be transparent. I'm much more at the. I'm very much in headwinds these days when I talk AI because I think
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure it's going to be like a hype cycle. That's like
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of. I won't say it will blow over because I think there's stuff there, but I think that people are significantly overestimating uh, the practical applicability that can be used to generate real value creation when it hits the real world. And I think there's various reasons for that. It's obviously it's really nicely built and it's tantalizing. Ooh, magic comes out.
Mm-hmm.
But then once you use that to then say, how do I create actual value? I take a real job and I replace parts of that job with this. How big a percentage of that work would then just dissipate? I mean, disappear. And I'm more I'm more on. I don't think it will have the impact that people believe. Actually, and the reason I'm saying that is because when I look back on, I'm a nerd when it comes to history and like development of stuff. So even when you go back to the invention of the internal combustion engine, right, or steam engine back in the days, you used to have horses. There's a lot of people who kind of did horseshoes and fed horses and cleaned up after horses. There was a huge problem in New York, apparently, that you couldn't get the horse manure out there fast enough because there's so many horses. Either way, then comes along the steam engine and technology, and basically that's a huge leap, right? That leads to industrialized revolution. And what happened is that that technology enabled us to be more effective, more productive, and it led to a lot of change in how we worked.
Mm-hmm.
Then came the next leap, and then from my perspective, I don't think when I see this and when I hear about it, it seems like people are like, "Wow, everything will be crazy," and but I don't think it's that much different from when I looked at, prior to the personal computer, when you did calculus, you had a piece of paper and you did it in hand, right? Then somebody invents
Mm-hmm.
Excel, and you do a lot of computations, and it becomes so much more effective. And Excel is like a mega powerful tool on how to work with numbers. And that means that work morphs into something different. And as I see it, I think I more see AI like then in the future I won't be going into Excel. I'll be talking to an AI that'll be going into Excel, and it will help me be much more effective, more productive, more all of that stuff. But I see it more of a morphing than a replacement. And where I think I come down is I think at the end of the day I don't think you would have that much replacement. And I'm a
Mm.
little bit colored also, actually. I remember very clearly. You remember when Elon Musk came out and he said in 6 months we will have full self-driving. Tesla will just be driving around. I don't know if it's 2 years or 2.5 years ago. And I remember all of these panel discussions where people were like, what are we going to do with all of the truckers? This represents, 40% of American jobs and, universal basic income and everything. And, then what happens? Like, it turns out that when the AI that was supposed to drive the car hit the real world, it could not
Yeah.
drive the car. And I have a feeling that we're seeing the same thing because the real world is just wicked, right? I remember Elon Musk was asked about, he don't talk about it anymore, but he was asked at some point, how's it going? And basically what he says is, in the real world, there's so many fringe cases, and the fringe cases are so weird.
Hmm.
And I think he was really surprised about just how much weirdness happens in the real world that it's like it's an impossible because you're trying to optimize for something pattern recognition, right? That's what AI is doing, right? They say, based on some criteria, I believe I can see what comes next, and you can do that to a certain point in time. But if you have these weird fringe cases that kind of pops in all of a sudden, and the result of that is you're dying, then the chances of you going to 100% automized is just going to be real difficult. And I have a feeling we're going to see the same thing. Once you hit the real world with all of this stuff, people are going to be like, oh, this is nice. It can do this stuff. And I get this output out. But it's not 100% there. So now I have to check all of this output. And I have to go through it and recheck it and rewrite it
Yeah.
and do some
And
stuff, right?
we're humans. I mean, we're not really fit to change that quickly, even if we believe we are. We still have our own reptilian brains with us. Uh, I follow your line of thought. However, I think there is also an element of the frog in the boiling water. Uh,
Mm.
you know,
Yeah.
that it we don't notice until it's kind of there,
Yeah.
and then maybe we don't die like the frog, but it's just we're used to it. So even though I don't remember, I didn't have a job before computers. I went to school before computers, but
Me
or
too.
before everyone had one.
I'll put myself in that category too.
Uh, it's it really has changed the way that we work. Like just the fact that we can sit here and talk now, and
Yes.
everything that we've talked about in this conversation is affected by technology as well.
Yes.
So this new technology, the AI, will also affect the way that we work, and it will affect the skills that we need. So a lot of this predictability that AI can do, that we have been trying to do, we don't need to do that anymore. So if I look into the crystal ball, then we would need to cultivate this sense and respond um, skill set even more as leaders and human beings, where what we see are the fringe cases. We see them and we sense them, we respond to them, and we can then use the predictability of the AI combined with that into creating new solutions.
But that part I 1,000% agree on. So there's
Mm,
I don't doubt that I think everyone will be working with AIs. So
mm,
it's like I'm 100% sure 5 years down the line, a good part of my work will be interacting with different AIs that have different roles, like
mm,
an AI that is doing X and an AI that is doing Y, that is doing stuff much smarter than I can do. And by having that, so I think instead of me today I have some skills, not a lot of skills, very limited skills, but I have some skills in sheets, right? Going into
Mm.
sheets, creating financial modeling, all of that stuff. So there's a financial modeling skill in sheets that will change into a prompting an AI to build financial modeling in sheets skill, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
So from that aspect, I 1000% agree on what you say. But I always come back to like I have such a hard time distinguishing this from like Google, right? Like prior to Google, when Google kind of came around and it got so easy to just find all of this information, what happened in my head is like I just stopped holding a lot of information, right? You remember,
Yeah.
yeah, I know you must remember this, right? You must have had geography in school. Somebody saying, "What's the capital of Germany?" and "What is the capital of this?" And I remember I had all of this stuff I had to know, and I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't. My dad was always like, "You don't know what the capital of." I can't remember the country. I know most of the European ones, but some country, and I was
Kazakhstan.
like, I don't care, Dad. I'm like, do I Google what's the capital of Bim? There it is. And I'm like, that just changed a lot of things because then Google became a powerful tool I could use for some things. But I
Mm-hmm.
feel like it more changed than replaced. And what I feel a lot of people is talking about is replacing or removing. And I just have that sense that yes, it's gonna change and yes, it's gonna impact, but it's basically the same level of. Do you know what I mean? Like I have such a hard
Mm.
time distinguishing what is it that will be running through all of these AI models compared to like having a Google as a tool. And if that is the case, like I know that the world we work in today, and I agree that it's changing and it's changing fast with technology, right? But distinguishing how Google impacted my work, I'm still working full time. I'm still optimized. I'm just optimized with Google compared to whatever was there before.
Mm.
For me, it kind of feels like the same. I think at least I have a hard
Yeah, I
time doing
mean,
it.
and it is up to us what we want to do with the possibilities that the new technologies offer. And
Yeah.
so far, we have not transferred new technology into more free time, not to a huge
No,
degree, not to the degree that was foreseen uh,
we
years
transferred
back.
it to shareholder value. It's like now we can be
Yeah,
more productive. Let's pay out more money to the ownership. Yeah, no, that's true.
that's at least one take.
But that could
Yeah.
actually be an interesting part. I talked to a guy from Microsoft. He was like, maybe the 4-day work week is something you should seriously consider. That was his point of
Mm-hmm.
view, which
Mm-hmm.
I think that is the best case scenario, right? It's like we become super productive, so everyone can work less, do more leisure. I think that would be really nice. But I have, I have, I have a feeling that's not gonna be it. That's
Yeah, at least work with something that, you know, makes sense to us and that we like. We're coming back to kind of the beginning of the conversation with
yes,
this, what are we spending our time on? So if we're
yeah,
spending time on things that we feel are not productive, uh, then we have an issue. But if we're spending time on things that, make sense, have an impact, productive, where we learn, where we grow, where we spend time with people we like, then we know then we don't. It doesn't matter that we're working, you know.
no, 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 no.
So it's also that sense that work, not work,
That's
because
such a
of
fascinating thread to kind of pick on because that's actually. Do you think that's because that's how I feel with 24 slides. It's like it's a deeper thing than just having a job. It's a fulfillment thing, right? Because I really believe in our purpose. I believe we're making a
mm,
difference. We create these awesome jobs, and there's a sense to me that more and more companies go in that direction. Do you think that's actually underneath? That
mm,
that is a part of the same movement of saying, at some point down the line, um, work has to be not just some place you create value so you get a salary, but it has to be a place of fulfillment where you kind of have something. Do you think that's a part of it? Of
yes, keeping in mind that there are huge parts of the world's population who do not have that
Where work is just work.
possibility.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So, but within kind of that
Our
little
bubble
bubble
of the
that we're
Western
talking in
world.
here, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I see it in my work with startups and scale ups as well, that we think of this entrepreneur as the Mark Zuckerberg directly out of university creating some big unicorn. But most of the entrepreneurs and founders I work with are, of course, some are newly educated, but a lot have experience, and they're in good, well-paid jobs. But they get an idea and they go for it. So this sense of owning your own job, and
Yes.
I'm in my case myself, left a good job to start up consultancy
Yeah.
because I really believe in changing the way we work. So it's working for something that's bigger than my own career or bigger than my own salary.
Yeah.
And you know, I see that in what you do, and I see that in a lot of the entrepreneurs I work with. And of course, it would be great to make a huge amount of money out of this company, but that's more like the investor mindset. For a lot of the founders, it's more about making, following a passion.
Let that be the end. That's such a nice way of. Ah, lovely. Thank you so much for coming in to the campfire at Big Minds Camp.
Yeah.
It's nice when you are as limited from a mind perspective as me to have somebody who actually have, I know, really nice conversation. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Robert.
So
It's
many
been a
learnings.
pleasure.
So many learnings.
Really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you for your questions and perspectives as well. I'm leaving here with a bigger mind as well.
Thank you so much.